Spiritual innovator of women's health and wellness, here to give you my summary of the first episode of the Truth About Cancer series. So this was a series that started yesterday. The first episode was out tonight. So I thought I would give you my summary while the details are still fresh in my mind and my heart is still touched by the courage of these people who are putting together this documentary series to empower you and your health. So I'd encourage you to watch the series, and I'm going to include the link. Share it with those you love. You know, cancer affects 1 in every 3, 1 in every 4 people. So if it's not in you or in your family, it soon will be. Now, the thing about cancer is that it's not a disease. It's a symptom of a dis-ease condition in your body. Because we all have cancer cells, but normally our immune system keeps it in check. There's a lot of deception and fear created around the word cancer. And this documentary series will go through step by step. The first episode talking about the history of chemotherapy and the pharmaceutical monopoly. You know, the original medical schools included homeopathy, included herbal medicine, natural medicines in addition to pharmaceuticals. But the Flexner Report of 1910 stated that, you know, Carnegie and the Rockefeller Foundations engineered the medical system with donations to focus on pharmaceuticals. So the natural therapies started to disappear from medical schools, and the universities, you know, loaded up their boards of directors with people that were employed in these big pharmaceutical companies. You know, the goal of healthcare with this pharmaceutical influence, you know, wasn't public health care as much as it was about making money. You know, disease as a marketplace or the largest pharmaceutical investment. So MDs grew up in schools learning about pharmaceuticals, thinking this is the only way to healing. And the pharmaceuticals, the medical associations, and even the universities themselves, you know, became lapdogs to this pharmaceutical industry that were donating to the schools. You know, chemotherapy, I didn't know this, came from understanding about mustard gas, you know, chemical warfare. And you know yourself, anyone who's having chemotherapy, they're toxic. You have to make sure their urine is disposed in a certain way, and you have to wear gloves to handle them. So if their body fluids are toxic, aren't these chemicals toxic to their bodies? Like, how can their bodies heal and recover? I learned that tamoxifen, which is the #1 drug prescribed for breast cancer, is actually a carcinogen. It's carcinogenic. So they're giving a cancer-causing drug to a person who has cancer. And it's estimated that 50% of cancers will be medically induced. The chemotherapy may change the size of the tumor initially, but because it affects the stem cells of cancer, it comes back with a vengeance. Now, when they interviewed oncologists, 90% of oncologists said they wouldn't do chemotherapy for themselves or for their families. Why? Because they know that it doesn't give a long-term success rate. 2, they may lose their job because there's certain standards of practices that a medical doctor must uphold. Fear of being discredited in their profession. Or in California, it's against the law for an oncologist to recommend any natural therapy. Now, there's an oncologist that has recently passed, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, who did amazing work in this field. That may be somebody you'd want to look up, and the series talks a little bit about him. What else did I learn? You know, often you say, how can this happen, really? Like, you know, how do the FDA and the drug companies get these drugs to market if they're carcinogenic? Well, the pharmaceutical companies are quite wealthy, and they can pay ghostwriters to write a beautiful report that looks really neat and quotes research Then they just have to have an oncologist put their name on that report, and it can be published in a medical journal, then that influences other doctors and can guide and manipulate behaviors. The drug cartels that this first documentary series talks about will give you some in-depth history, even into world wars and what it means to these big drug companies to maintain control of the population and control of their biggest investment, Medicare or pharmaceuticals. Something that you may like to look up, and I know personally somebody who's done this Gersten therapy and had amazing success of curing cancer. Because the American Cancer Association has changed their mandate. Of course, they're not to eradicate cancer anymore. Their new mandate or mission is living with cancer. Why do we have to live with cancer? Because cancer is the number one, disease that stabilizes the whole pharmaceutical company. So we have to keep this in order to keep making money from pharmaceuticals. If there's a natural cure of cancer, the pharmaceutical companies lose business. But the Gersten, Gerson, Gersten therapy, one of the stories in this documentary series that really touched my heart was of parents that were deciding, based on research, that they didn't want to do chemotherapy for their child and that they were going to try a natural method. Well, they were taken to court, and the judge had ruled in this one particular case that the oncologist was the expert and awarded the state of Illinois custody of that child. So the child was taken from the parents and was forced into having chemotherapy. To me, that's not only working against our parental rights, that is taking away our human rights. It's this fence of pharmaceuticals that we need to have the courage to liberate ourselves out of with information. So again, as I said, cancer, this psychological warfare that the pharmaceutical company plays against, our society that scares us into taking chemotherapy drugs and radiation, just know that you have an alternative. There are other methods. This Gersten therapy is one of them. And this series will talk about other ways, natural alternatives, options that you have. That chemotherapy and radiation isn't your only option, despite what someone might decide to tell you. So, free from fear, you can cure cancer naturally. Please watch this series. Again, it's free. It's a free documentary. I think each episode will be up for 24 hours, and I will post it above. So again, thank you for listening. I'd ask you to reach for the stars, envision and achieve your personal best, and most of all, enjoy the journey. This is Dr. Dina Churchill, signing out.